Wow. Well, thank you. It's an honor to be here in Barcelona. You know, I want to talk a little bit about why people think it's so weird that a man like myself made a film like this. You know, I was born actually with a lot more value than I ever imagined. I was a young, healthy male born into a family in the USA. I grew up similar to most Americans I know in a generation that taught us that hard work in school would pay off. That if we followed this formula of going on to university and getting good grades, we could be and do anything that we wanted. And most of us ended up doing just that. I also grew up seeing girls as my equal. I had a father who taught me that girls and boys could accomplish the same thing. I admire my mother and my sister who are loving and successful and taught me to always respect girls. I was competitive with girls who got better grades than me in school. They pushed me harder, and who were equally or even more talented than me on the soccer field. This whole time, I was naive to the fact that these girls would grow up to be women, and that one day they would have to work harder to get the same job as me, and they would get paid significantly less. And thankfully, I had the opportunity in my early 20s to move to South America and live for a few years, and it's when it really hit home for me. It made me realize how lucky I truly am and what a gift I was given to be born in the right place at the right time. And it was on that trip, during that time in my life, that I realized that, men, we've got a lot of work to do. There are injustices happening against girls and women all over the place, and my eyes opened up to it, and it was in that time that I realized that it's my mission, and it should be the rest of the men's mission in this audience and around the world, to correct this imbalance. And so then I started my own quest. So now I live in New York City, and I've got an incredibly diverse group of friends. They range from ballet dancers to lawyers, designers. And during our generation, during our lifetime, the mass media constantly reminds us that the world we live in is damaged. It's got rapid climate change associated with global warming. We've got native populations being decimated. We've got civil wars, chemical weapons, poverty, disease. It's so frustrating. All of us share this frustration, and we want so badly to contribute to some part of the solution. We want our careers to have meaning. We want our personal lives to have meaning. We want to do something to fix the damaged world. I know a lot of people now who are leaving their jobs in industries like finance and law, high-paying industries, to search for work in the nonprofit sector or to study or volunteer abroad. A lot of people I know are even starting their own businesses that have a socially responsible core. Think about it. Have a look around. Is what you do changing the world? Are you fulfilled with your own life? Now, one great thing about my generation is that we're also demanding to be part of the solution. We're going against the mainstream in this sense. We want to be part of the change, and we're not willing to sit back any longer and wait for donations or development dollars to fix these problems. We've got power, and we need to learn how to exercise it. And you may ask, well, where does this power come from? So I'm going to share a little story that happened to me recently. I was in a taxi cab a couple of weeks ago in Australia on my way to the airport in Sydney, and we were driving down the highway, and we were listening to this talk radio show about increasing philanthropic giving to the health sector. My cab driver was from India, and he turned down the volume, and he looked back, and he said, "Excuse me." He said, "What is philanthropy?" And so in a sort of put-on-the-spot moment, I scoured my internal dictionary for the best definition, and I mean, how would you define it? I said, philanthropy is a person or a business with money that wants to invest in a charitable cause that they have a personal or business interest in, and it sounded really good, and I sort of gave myself a pat on the back, and he said, "Thank you," and we went on our way down the road. But as we cruised towards the airport, I thought about it more, and I thought, is that really all there is to philanthropy? Just money and a cause? And so it prompted me to do a bit more research into the word. And what I realized was that I was completely incorrect, and I was surprised. Philanthropy actually means the love of humanity. The love of humanity in the sense of caring for, enhancing, developing what it is to be human on both benefactors. Now, is that the definition of philanthropy that you were thinking? Probably not. If so, you're pretty brilliant. Anyway, so I want to talk about that now with your desire to actually have meaning in your careers or in your personal lives. Bridge those two, couple those together. Citizen philanthropy, folks, it's so powerful. We each can do it. And you may think that it's just about, oh, well, we can share messages. No, let me tell you, it can increase financial investments in problems, and I will show you why. Let me give you an example of how this worked with Girl Rising. So a couple of months ago, we had a screening happen in DC. It was just one chapter of the film. Senna, you may have seen her there in the trailer. 16-year-old girl from Peru, 10 minutes, event that really wasn't related to the film at all. It was a policy-focused event in DC, and this man reached out to me and he said, I was so moved by Senna's story. I need to share this with my workplace. I've got to bring this film. He lived in a town in North Carolina. So he ended up renting out a local cinema, sold-out show, Thursday night. Film goes great. Everyone loves it. This man stands up in front of the crowd afterward, and he says, I challenge each and every one of you to one thing, one simple thing. His call to action was, share the message of Girl Rising. Okay, fine. So let's fast forward 3 more months now when the president of the same company approaches me, and he now wants his CSR arm to give an ongoing contribution to girls' education programs. He also wants to bring the film to 3,000 employees in over 20 offices around the world. You see what that one man who was ignited by a story did has not only increased the financial investment to girls' education by a factor that if he had just gotten out his checkbook and written a check and sat back and waited, wouldn't have done anything. So much bigger, but even more important, it's catalyzed the sharing of ideas, the moving of knowledge, and it's going to inspire other people to do the same. You know, that story is extra special in my opinion because it's also of a man standing up for girls and women. And trust me, I work in this space, and it's very rare that a man comes up to me and says he wants to bring it to his workplace. Men are so important in this equation. During the making of Girl Rising, we met tons of men, women, boys, and girls. We interviewed hundreds of people in the developing world, and I will tell you that there is one single moment that kept happening. It repeated itself over and over and over. It happened in every country, Egypt, Afghanistan, India, Peru, it didn't matter where. And it had everything to do with changing the course of success for a girl. It was simply when a boy or a man stood up to defend, protect, enable, or enhance a girl's life, practicing philanthropy. You know, there was a guy in Ethiopia. He was an older brother named Meselu, and his sister had been sold into marriage. She was 13. The day that her suitor came and knocked at the door, Meselu answered, and he said no. He stood up. He said, no, I will sell everything that I own to keep my sister in school. His action worked. His voice was heard, and years later, Esmera is excelling in school, and she is not married. It's men like Meselu and men like the other man who hosted that screening that are changing the world. This damaged world is fixable. It's up to each of us to invest our capital. We have all the social resources in the world. We just need to learn how to invest them. Thank you so much.